Hello, let's discuss the overall data organization by SAP. SAP keeps, as you know, everything in one database in a centralized place, and everybody else sitting behind computers, just like you right now, are just clients who can access to the central server, and the central server pretty much can serve the data from the centralized database to everybody who attempts to connect. Okay, so overall SAP data is organized in the following way. Number one, there is a notion of client. What's a client? Client is a highest level organization in the SAP. For example, let's say there is a company, Coca-Cola, right? It's a multinational conglomerate. So they operate subdivisions in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, etc. But they all operate under the umbrella of the corporate headquarters. So therefore, for the SAP installation, this company is going to act as one organization. So therefore, talking about the example of Coca-Cola, client is Coca-Cola Incorporated, the mother holding, and everybody else basically are independently operated companies under it. Coming back to the example that's relevant to us, we are going to be dealing with this Global Bikes International. This is an imaginary company that was founded by two bike enthusiasts, and originally the company was in Germany, but later it expanded to the US. So they formed overall global enterprise, Global Bikes Incorporated, which is a mother holding, and mother holding has two subdivisions working in the United States and also in Europe. So from the SAP standpoint, this is one installation, and GBI Enterprise, the holding company, is the client. So that's basically what client is. Client also can contain multiple companies under the main holding, right? So in our case, we have US company and we have German company. So how do we distinguish between them within SAP? Every branch or company that operates under the corporate umbrella gets assigned a unique company ID or company code. So the entire US branch has the company code US00, and the Germany company in Europe has the company code DE00. Okay, so that explains what client is and how clients consist of multiple company codes. All right. Refining that even further, every company can have multiple locations where they operate. Locations are called plants under the SAP Data Organization. So plant can be anything. It can be a physical plant, the actual plant where the product is being manufactured, produced, stored. It can be distribution facility, such as distribution center or warehouse. It can be service center, call center, for example, or it can be corporate headquarters, office where there is no production, no product storage. So in other words, any physical location that company has, it can be anything, really the nature of the location can be different, is called under the SAP organization plant. So let's go back to our organization of the global bikes. As we discussed, there is a client global company, GBI Incorporated. Then there are two companies operating under that, and let's say a US company has three locations. One of them is Miami distribution center. That's the truly distribution center. It's a warehouse. There is no production going on. The only thing it does is it stores inventory, such as finished bikes, or trading goods, such as helmets, toolkits, water bottles, knee pads, etc., and sells them directly to the customers, which happen to be probably small bike shops. Also, there is San Diego distribution center. This is also a warehouse, so it only stores finished goods for distribution to the customers. And there is a third one, Dallas plant. This is a factory, so they buy raw materials such as frames, wheels, handlebars, and they assemble bikes, and later bikes basically are distributed either to San Diego or Miami plant, and from these two locations they're sold directly to the customers. You can see that German company has also a couple of locations, couple of plants under the company ID. One of them is northern, another southern. So the idea basically is they have two locations, two distribution centers, one of them serving Northern Europe, another Southern Europe. But our focus is going to be primarily here, the US distribution structure. Okay, so let's move further. All right, that's something that we just discussed. Now let's discuss types of data that is being held by your typical ERP system. There are two types. There is master data and there is transaction data. So we have a slide on transaction data somewhere here. Yeah, right here. Okay, so let's first discuss what master data is. Master data is something that is fairly stable. In other words, it does change occasionally, every once in a while, but it's relatively stable. For example, customers. Customers represent master data. If I record a customer on my SAP system, I know name of the customer, his address, contact information, phone, email, contact name, etc. This is pretty stable data because every once in a while it can change. Like for example, customer changed the office location, so they have a new street, city, state, zip, a new phone number, a new contact name. But that doesn't happen too frequently. Maybe once in a couple of years or so. Vendors, same idea. Companies that supply me, they have name, address, contact number, email, contact person, etc. That changes very rarely. Products that I keep in my inventory, like for example, let's say I'm manufacturing mountain bike. Unless I do some really major redesign of this product, remanufacturing, I use different parts. That is a typically a very stable configuration. So therefore, once I have this on record, that rarely, if ever, changes. So this is an example of master data. So let's discuss what is a transaction data. Transaction data is very fluid, actually. In other words, it changes quite a bit, and it does so on a daily basis. Examples could be purchase orders. For example, let's say to maintain my manufacturing going, I have to buy frames, wheels, seats, handlebars for my bikes. It may happen not on a daily basis, but sure enough, it's probably going to happen on a weekly basis, right? So I place orders frequently. Sales orders, in other words, something that my customers buy from me. Sales orders I can actually receive every day, and multiple orders a day sometimes. So therefore, this information, such as purchase orders, sales orders, when I receive inventory, I have to record that. When I pay invoices to my vendors, when I receive payments from my customers, these kind of transactions happen every day. So therefore, my storage that contains transactional data is being updated very frequently, on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So this data is not stable, it changes all the time, it's very fluent. That's why it's called transaction data. So transaction data addresses these questions. Who, when, where, what. For example, I receive a payment from my customers. Who paid? When that happened, I have to record the date, today. Where it's coming from, that would be my customer, and where I post that, and what exactly. So I received a check for $1,000, and that's in reference to my previously shipped sales order that I invoiced my customer, and now I'm receiving the payment. So that's transaction data. Well, let's go back to master data, and one of the most frequently used master data in SAP is material master data. What's material master data? As we discussed, inventory is fairly stable, right? Type of data. If I have established certain bike, for example, on record that I'm selling this bike, then the configuration of this bike, the type, the ID that I gave this specific product changes very rarely, if ever. So there are a lot of different types of raw materials actually built of material master data that are built into the SAP. So we're going to discuss 4 most frequently used master data. So number 1, raw materials. Now these abbreviations, they refer back to the SAP. SAP is a German company, right? So therefore, a lot of screen names or abbreviations used in SAP program, they don't make sense for us. because we don't speak German, most of us anyway. But they do make sense for Germans, obviously. So raw materials has an abbreviation ROH. Then there is work in progress or semi-finished goods, HALB, finished product, third, and also trading goods, HAWA. So let's discuss every single one of them briefly. Raw materials, ROH. What are they? These are typically items that I'm buying from the external supplier. For example, it can be wheels, it can be frames for the bikes, it can be handlebars for the bikes, it can be spoke reflectors, so something that goes into my finished product, bikes that I manufacture. The purpose of raw materials is to participate in the production process, and typically they are not sold to the end customers. Now, of course, it can be an exception, like for example, a customer bought a bike from me and I need to replace a wheel, right? So they will buy a wheel from me as well. But that's an exception rather than the rule. I don't anticipate a lot of this type of demand. So typically, raw materials participate in purchasing transactions. They typically do not participate in sales transactions, and once being purchased, they are later becoming a part of production. So every time when I have a release of inventory from the warehouse to the production floor, raw materials should be part of that. So examples right here: frames, wheels, tires, tubes, etc. So raw materials. Now let's discuss semi-finished goods. Semi-finished goods is work in progress. So a typical situation is when semi-finished goods, HALB in German abbreviation, a typical situation is I have a bike, for example, which has wheels installed, but I still have to attach a seat and a handlebar to the bike. So this is a semi-finished good. I don't receive it from somewhere. I make it internally. So it's part of the process that I run inside of my organization. So clearly, semi-finished goods are used a lot in the production process. They don't participate in purchasing typically, because I normally don't buy semi-finished goods from outside supplier, and I don't sell semi-finished goods to the customers, obviously. So therefore, they don't participate in the sales transactions. Front wheel assembly, an example. Okay, so now let's take a look at the finished goods. Finished goods first, well, it speaks for themselves, right? This is a type of inventory that typically I produce. I generally do not purchase that, and that is the result of my own internal production. Okay, so for example, if I'm making mountain bikes or some sort of the girl's bike model, and I do that internally, and once the production is done, that becomes part of my finished goods inventory. Touring bike, deluxe touring bike. So finished goods typically do not participate in purchases, obviously, because typically I don't buy them, I make them. Finished goods actually can be part of the production, because that's the result of the production, and also that's what I sell to my customers at the end when everything is manufactured. So they take big part in the sales process. And finally, let's discuss the last one, one of four that we selected to discuss. HAWA, trading goods. What are the trading goods? Trading goods is something that we're going to actually use in our in-class example for purchasing process. Trading goods typically are finished, but I didn't make them. So therefore, I'm buying them from the outside vendor. I don't do any work on this item, so I bought them. They're already in the form, which is pretty much prepared, which is ready for shipment to the customers. So I don't do any extra manufacturing on them. And when the demand comes along, I just sell them to the customers. Examples can be helmet or water bottle. For example, if I have a supplier of helmets, then I just buy a bunch of helmets from them. I keep them in the warehouse, and my next customer, like small bike store, for example, they can order, let's say, 5 mountain bikes from me, and also they will order 25 helmets. So I'll take helmets out of my trading goods storage and sell it to the customer. So therefore, HAWA trading goods typically are parts of purchasing process, because I buy them from external vendor. parts of the sales process because I sell them to my external customers, but typically they do not participate in the production process because I buy them already in the finished form. Okay, and I believe there is one more piece of information that I need to tell you about. Storage location. So this is another level of keeping information, and actually it refers back to let's see, where is this slide? Yeah, this slide. Remember we discussed at the beginning that the highest level of data organization in SAP is client. That's corporate headquarters. Client operates in multiple different companies, so that's the second level of data storing. Every company has can have multiple locations, right? They can be physical plant, warehouse, office, call center, anything. Storage location goes actually one layer deeper. For example, let's take a look at my Miami warehouse. In Miami warehouse, I can store probably two types of products, I'm guessing. That would be finished goods, and that would be trading goods, right? Or maybe I also have some raw materials. For example, let's say I buy raw materials in a centralized fashion. I buy a lot of frames from my supplier, and then later on I send these frames to my Dallas plant for manufacturing. So I may have a warehouse that keeps different types of inventory. To keep things organized, my warehouse should be should follow a certain structure. I can't just receive a bunch of items and throw them on the shelves and later on try to find them when I need them. So typically warehouse is organized in sections. So there is a section where I keep my trading goods that I buy from the outside suppliers and sell them to my customers without doing work on them. Let's say from the Dallas plant I receive different finished bikes models, and I stock them inside the warehouse waiting for sales orders coming from my customers. So what I can do is kind of subdivide my warehouse into sections, and each section is dedicated to holding just a certain type of inventory. The way to do it can be multiple ways to do it. I can, for example, let's say I organize my warehouse in form of shelves, and shelves go in parallel to each other. So I can say, well, these aisles I'm going to dedicate to, like aisles from 1 to 10 I can dedicate to trading goods. Aisles from 11 through 12 I can dedicate to finished goods. So storage location, let me find this slide. Storage location is a place inside the plant, which typically is a warehouse, where I keep my materials. So every time when I receive inventory into the warehouse, therefore I have to specify exactly where it goes into the storage, right? So in our example that we're going to do in class, purchasing, I buy items from my vendors, and when the items come into my warehouse, I have to create an event. I have to create a record about inventory receipt. So therefore, every time when I have an inventory coming in, not only I have to acknowledge that I received this type of inventory in the amount of so many units, but I also have to specify the storage location. In other words, where exactly do I put them in my warehouse. Okay, so I believe this is all information that I wanted to communicate about data organization in SAP, and I think we're ready for our assignment number 1. So let's do some purchasing transaction using SAP.